The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. After he had fed the people, Jesus made the disciples get into a boat and precede him to the other side, while he dismissed the crowds. After doing so, he went up on the mountain by himself to pray. When it was evening, he was there alone. Meanwhile, the boat, already a few miles offshore, was being tossed about by the waves, for the wind was against it. During the fourth watch of the night, Jesus came toward the disciples walking on the sea. When the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified. "It is a ghost," they said, and they cried out in fear. At once, Jesus spoke to them. "Take courage, it is I. Do not be afraid." Peter said to Jesus in reply, "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water." Then Jesus said, "Come." Peter got out of the boat and began to walk on the water toward Jesus, but when he saw how strong the wind was, he became frightened. And beginning to sink, he cried out, "Lord, save me!" Immediately, Jesus stretched out his hand and caught Peter and said to him, "O you of little faith, why did you doubt?" After they got into the boat, the wind died down. Those who were in the boat did Jesus homage, saying, "Truly, you are the Son of God." The Gospel of the Lord. It was 1951. The song reached the number 2 spot on the top 100 records. Frankie Lane sang it, and it was called Jezebel. And I'm sure some of you have it in your mind, even as I said those words. It was you, Jezebel. Remember that one? He sang it a little differently, but today's first reading has a lot to do with Jezebel. Now, you didn't hear about Jezebel in the reading because we always have shorter readings than the whole story in the Bible. But Jezebel was very much a part of where Elijah was at that point. Because what we come in on is Elijah being told by God to go to the Mount of Horeb, also called Sinai, God's mountain. When you wanted to see God or be with God, that was the place to go. That's where Moses went. That's where we got the 10 Commandments. That's where the covenant was made between God and his people, the Mount of Horeb. So Elijah goes there because the Lord has commanded him to do so. And why? Well, all the prophets but Elijah, all the prophets of Israel had been killed. Jezebel was married to King Ahab. Ahab ruled the northern kingdom. She had taken him away from the God of our fathers, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the God whom we call the Lord, She had taken him away from that God, our single, lone God, and taken him instead to the gods of the Phoenicians, the Baal. And Elijah knew the 10 Commandments. He knew, I am the Lord your God, you shall not have strange gods before me. And here was Jezebel leading Ahab quite willingly to worship other gods. And with Ahab came many of the people of God worshiping Baal. And so Elijah knew the land was evil. The people seemed to be evil. The prophets were dead. And Jezebel had threatened to kill him. So he was happy to go to the mountain of Horeb because he was very discouraged in his mission to be a prophet to the people. And I'm sure he crawled into his cave and thought to himself, safe at last. I'm going to find peace here. And instead, the Lord said to him, get outside, because the Lord is going to pass by. Go outside, the Lord said, and stand on the mountain before the Lord, because the Lord will be passing by. Would you go? If God said to you, go out, the Lord will be passing by. He's stricken with fear, but I think he really means yes. Would you go? Amen? Yeah, the Lord is going to be passing by. I'm going out. I'm going to go see what the Lord looks like. And when he gets outside, what happens? A strong and heavy wind was rending the mountain and crushing rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. After the wind, there was an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. After the earthquake, there was fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. After the fire, there was a tiny whispering sound. And that's where the Lord was. See, we often think about the Lord as thunderous, as mighty, as powerful. So he should be, after all. He should be in all those, the wind and the fire and the thunder. That's where we should find, no. Elijah found God in that tiny whispering sound. And in that tiny whispering sound, he found peace. And the Lord ordered him to go back to his mission of preaching and teaching the people. The Lord gave Elijah an assignment. So in the midst of his discouragement, he found strength. And in the midst of his loneliness, he found peace.